Hey guys and girls, hope you're good. Just bear with me 1 second whilst I get this sorted. Right, so second half of the video. So we've done Aussie dollar CAD. We're going to carry on from there. So I just run through Aussie dollar CAD. Whether it wins or loses, we'll wait and see. You know the main reasons why I was looking at entering this market. Um, Obviously, we've had a rejection out of this one here. We just tapped the top of it. And now what I'm hoping for is this next hourly candle to flip into a bullish phase. Okay. Now the 30-minute candle is already bullish. So I'm hoping that this just gathers up the liquidity here and goes up and then pushes through, pushes out and into the highs up here. As we know, overall, Aussie dollar is bullish. And also Mondays and sometimes Tuesdays as well tend to be that kind of push and break out of daily highs. Okay, that's what I've kind of noticed over a long period of watching the markets. That kind of Mondays and Tuesdays we tend to really push and just break through those highs, as opposed to previous daily highs, previous daily lows, as opposed to rejecting them. So we'll wait and see what happens. Just bear with me a second. Okay, cool. Just running a lot of tests and stuff at the moment on the robot just to optimize the settings for each market. So yeah, it's interesting times. Okay, so we've done Aussie dollar CAD. Let's just have a look at some other ones. So Aussie dollar CAD's fine. AJ, I'm going to leave because we're at just major highs. I wouldn't even really want to call anything on that right now. Again, it's just going to really depend on what JPY wants to do, and if Aussie dollar wants to continue in that bullish phase. So we'll leave that. We'll do a CAD JPY. CAD looks exactly the same. So this is purely being driven by JPY right now. So if we have a look at this one here, which is the CAD CHF market. Okay, so again, what have we got? So we've got a lot of liquidity here, which is what we've actually tapped into last week. We've rejected that region as well. So we could see a turnaround on CAD CHF. We could see some weakness come through. Again, we're going to have to wait and see. But all we can do for now really is just measure out those highs and those lows. Jump onto the daily, have a closer look at what's happening. So we've got our high, we've got our low. Just delete all these little things here. Okay. We've also, looking on the daily, we've dug into this liquidity and we've bounced out of it as well. So I do, because the overall trends so far, I mean, we're in a range at the moment, and we're also at the top of that range. But I wonder if we were gathering and grabbing the liquidity down here in order to fuel that move to the next to the next high, basically. So I actually probably prefer the long position. Yeah, I probably prefer the long position on this. We've grabbed liquidity down here as well, so I think we could be pushing and maybe revisiting these highs. It's not really one of my favorite markets. This is kind of a bit of a boring market, to be honest. But if you were looking to buy, okay, we've already retested this order block, this region down here. There'll be a lower time frame order block down here, and now we're pushing and potentially going to be making another high. Okay, tapping into it at the moment. So if we were going to look at entries, okay, probably what I'd like to see is maybe this little low taken out would be nice. And then actually pulling back into kind of this region here for long positions. Okay, that's what I would be looking for, CAD CHF, something like that, nice and simple. We've then got DAX. Let's have a look at DAX. So I've got a lot of alerts on DAX for some reason. Let me just delete all these. Remove all alerts. There we go. Okay. So DAX weekly time frame first of all. So last week we had a big rejection actually. So what we kind of are seeing here is we're seeing that breakout that we couldn't break out from this region for months. And then now we've actually had this kind of retest up here and sellers kind of regaining that control. Now the candle was still bullish, We still were above the previous high as well. So I'd probably still expect upward movement this week to kind of retest the 14,800 region, which does give us a lot of opportunities for the week. And from an order block standpoint, let me just delete these and just whack on the weekly high and low, which is this one here and this one here. Okay. So what are we seeing here? What are we seeing here? So we've got on the daily time frame, we've pulled back into this region here, this kind of order block here, which we might find one on the 4-hourly time frame. It's kind of a big old order block, this one, but it's somewhere around this region here. Okay, so this is where we've kind of tapped into so far. Now, 4-hour order flow is currently bearish. Okay, 4-hour order flow is currently bearish, but the overall sort of daily would be currently bullish. Okay, so we could see that kind of flip reverse. So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see this high here taken out. Okay, if we can get that high there taken out, then potentially we'll be in for that move up to the 14,800s and potentially even the highs there at 14,950. So we're going to have to really drill down lower on this if we're going to try and to get that move. So with the 1-hour time frame, we've also pulled back into this region as well, and we've rejected that. So there'll probably be a really nice order block down here somewhere. So if I wanted to enter this market, okay, and this is quite a ballsy move, to be honest, it would be looking at somewhere like 14,430 and seeing if we reach into those regions there, into this area where the consolidation occurred before that push happened. So pushing back into that region, okay, around here, and then having our stops just below, which is quite big. But again, we can look at the lower time frames to smarten that up. And then you've got your 500 odd pip target, and even with that big stop, it's 7 risk reward. Okay, so something like that is what I'd be focusing on. Now, just bear in mind, if this structure here breaks, okay, and even more so if we look at the 4-hour time frame, if this structure here breaks, then we are certainly not going to be heading up anytime soon, and this will just be the retracement, and then we'll be potentially heading to the downside. Okay, so Germany, DAX, I'm going to be looking at a bullish potential move on that. But just be aware that the order flow is currently bearish. So we're going to need to really see buyers taking control around this region. We might even pop even further down into this area first before we actually look at going long. So just be careful with that. If we look at Euro Aussie, so obviously all the Aussie dollar markets are very, very strong. So last week was bullish week, but it was really just a retest week. So we can see that the market came all the way back up to test the entire body of the previous candle. It did actually breach the low. It didn't breach the high of the previous candle. It did breach the low. So I think probably, especially with potential euro weakness, then we could see this actually moving lower and actually heading for 1.45 and lower. Okay, that would be the main target. So that there is about 150 pips. And obviously, if we actually zoomed in on this one here, we'll find something around 1.4425, 1.4450 for those potential bigger targets on the short. Okay, but really the buyers are still not in control. Like this candle here does not match the selling pressure of this candle. This candle here does not match the selling pressure of this candle either. If we go into the daily time frame, where can we find the entries? So what can we see? So the first thing is what we've done is we've kind of pulled back up into the previous leg that was broken. Okay, the previous leg that was broken, we've rejected that, and now it looks like we are heading for this region here. If we go on to the 4-hourly time frame, again, just missing those order blocks for us, but let's have a look. So we've got potential opportunities if we get a pullback into that 1.47, 1.4720. Maybe even, because this is kind of quite a flat line here, it might actually consider taking the liquidity of this region here, okay, and actually pulling into this one, which hasn't been retested yet, okay, and then maybe we could look at that short opportunity into these levels here, okay. So that could be an option, that could be an option, and obviously we've got these targets down here of 1.45, 4530, 4540. and potentially then even lower into 1.4450 depending on that pressure. But overall, bearish order flow right now. Continue with that. Aussie dollar is strong. Euro, I think, is weakening today. So let's see what happens then. Let's have a look at Euro CAD. So Euro CAD on the weekly. So we had quite a big indecision last week, whereas we broke the low, we broke the high, we rejected the high quite strongly, but we did finish in that bearish, in a bullish candle. Okay, so it's kind of potential for a little bit of a range to be created here. Now, when we look at the daily time frame, again, we've got little secrets here, such as that little revisit to that daily order block, which then has now potentially being the source for that market to move to the lower, to the downside, right? So potentially looking at seeing that market down to 1.3676, something like that. So I do favor the shorts, but just be aware, don't be looking at adventurous targets because it's kind of, last week was a little bit uncertain. But overall, if we were looking at shorting this market, we've got the new daily order block, which is around this level. And then we've got the 4 hourly, if we just go into that. We've also got that 4 hourly low here, which we have actually already tested once, but this would be a nice opportunity, 3850 level, to be short in that market down here. Okay, so that's that. That's Euro CAD. Shorts. Euro Aussie is also shorts. This is going to be a 3-part video, I think, because this one's getting quite long and I just need to help get someone set up. So just, you're going to have to bear with me in a second. Euro GBP, Euro JPY. Let's have a look at Euro JPY. So if we look at Euro JPY on the weekly, okay. Actually, no, let's leave that because JPY is just crazy right now. If anything, I would consider retesting this wick up here. Again, it would need some dollar strength, but as you go down in the time frames, you can just see clues of what the market's feeding off of. Okay, so we've got this daily order block. When you look at it on the 4 hour, you can see we pulled into that, pushed back up. At the minute, we have rejected this low that was broken. So if we see that broken, then we can see those highs met. Otherwise, until then, we've got this order block right here, okay, which could potentially push us back into this kind of into this region here as well. So I would probably be looking for something like this. Okay, probably be looking for something like this. So that's Euro JPY, Euro NZD. It's going to be the same. That's fine. GA. GCAD, right? I've got to get someone set up, so just bear with me, and then I will carry on with 2 more markets, and then what I'll do is answer the questions and run through a couple of. Okay, so take 3. Obviously, I've gelled these 2 videos together, so we haven't got 3 separate videos to watch. Anyway, we finished on Euro JPY, I believe. So let's have a little look at what else we can expect from. Let's have a look at some GBP markets. So let's jump onto the weekly time frame. Actually, I'm not going to cover GA because it's at an area of liquidity, so it's just one that we just need to be careful of. Trend and everything is still bearish. If we look on the daily, we've got a nice bearish engulfing, we've got a nice retest candle, so we probably can see us actually breaking this low if we can continue that GBP weakness and Aussie dollar strength. And then also if we jump onto the 4 hourly time frame, we can kind of see this level was unable to be broken, and now it looks like we're going to be targeting and kind of pushing for the lows down here. Okay, so potential opportunity here of about 50 pips, but once we've broken that low, again, we have to scroll quite far back to be able to see where the next kind of area or level of liquidity is, and it's going to be roughly around 7.3. So there's somewhere between 50 and 150 pips available on GBP Aussie this week, so we'll have to wait and see what that wants to give. If I just jump onto the 4 hour, that's fine, 1 hour. So we're already wicking these regions here. So I do like this downside pressure. The only problem is with selling at a point like this, okay? And I'm not saying it's not necessarily the right thing to do because everything lines up quite nicely. We're getting the wicks up here. So I do expect that push to the downside from here. And if I was to do it, we would have to make sure that our stop loss is at least above here, which is 18 pips. But ideally, we'd want it a little bit higher. Again, just go down those time frames and have a look at where those areas are. So, for example, this candle here to me is relatively interesting. So we could come back and revisit this candle here, which is kind of the order block, not necessarily technically speaking, the actual order block, but it is an area where the orders came into the market, okay, to push that and make that new low. So that's what want to make sure that I cover if I was to be shorting this market. And then obviously we do have that potential for pushing all the way to the downside down here, and maybe even into the 7.3s, depending on how strong it's going to be. So it will be something like this, which is what I would be looking for this week. So that's that. That's GBP Aussie looking bearish to me. If we look at a couple more, just one or two more GBPs, again, just overall bearish. So just make sure you're trading with a trend. I think that's the most important thing. GJ, just leave J. NZD CAD, nothing really exciting going on there. A lot of dojis, a lot of indecision, but a lot of bullish pressure before that. So maybe we're gearing up for this much longer push of the NZD as well. So that could also push to the upside. But again, I wouldn't even put any bias or anything on that at all. So I'm going to pretty much leave that there in terms of the overall bias across the markets for this week. Sorry, this is a very, very long video, and I'm afraid, guys, it's not even over yet because there's a few questions that you guys want answered. So let's have a look. So we've got NZD CAD, just to finish off NZD CAD, buying opportunities below this level here, 8630 basically. This liquidity, this order block, this would be an ideal scenario to be buying this market, okay? Right, let's jump on to a couple of the questions and stuff. So NZD CAD, I still favor bullish, but it's pretty sideways. Okay, so Tanik put the correlation. Okay, so if DAXI is bearish, the XXX USD pairs are bullish, which is correct. But then Aussie dollar CAD, Euro Aussie, and is also bullish. Aussie dollar CAD. So normally, okay, I think I've said this a few times before, but just to kind of get something down in writing for you guys. Okay, so normally, if DXY is bullish, okay, oh, can't spell. DXY is bullish. What we will tend to find is Euro will be weak, so it'll be bearish. Okay. Aussie dollar will tend to be bearish as well. They're kind of the main ones. JPY will tend to be the same as dollar, which is bullish. And the ones that I personally believe don't necessarily, and obviously the other thing to really think about is if Aussie dollar is bearish, then a lot of the time, unless there's real news coming out of, unless there's solid news coming out of New Zealand, okay, what you'll find is NZD will tend to move relatively similar to Aussie dollar and vice versa. Now, the ones that, in my opinion, don't necessarily correlate too well is Canadian dollar and it's GBP. Okay, Canadian dollar and GBP. Now, the other thing is if DAX is bullish, gold should normally be bearish. And have I missed anything else? And it also tends to be, if gold is bearish, the indices, but again, it really depends on the news that's coming out of them. Okay, indices will tend to be bullish. Okay, and the main reason for that is because if gold is dropping, okay, it's more about the relationship with gold. So if gold is dropping, it's because people are prepared to take money out of their safer assets, such as gold, such as a safe haven, and put it into places that are slightly more risky, such as stocks and shares, because they believe that there's more value in stocks and shares. So that's why it's all about the flow of money, basically. So that's a rough idea. Okay, that's a rough idea for you of what you can expect. Okay, and obviously it's vice versa. If DXY is bearish, we're going to expect the gold will be bullish, and indices will be bearish, and euro will be bullish, and Aussie will be bullish. Now, what becomes confusing is when you have pairs like euro Aussie, because they're both meant to be bearish, right? So then it's more of a battle. It's more of a battle between which one is weaker or which one is stronger when you take gold out of the picture. So if we take, I think we've still got this option on here. So if we do DXY, okay, and let's just turn this into a line chart, okay. And then if we hit the plus here, we can put another symbol. So this here, you can compare the correlations yourself, okay. So if you put DXY here, now if you look at EXY, straight away there, we can see that they are almost, okay, give or take, polar opposites, right? They are almost polar opposites. So the best thing to do is just have your crosshair here. So as you can see here, the blue line is DXY, and what's happening? So when DXY increases, EXY goes down. EXY is the euro against all other currencies, okay? When dollar comes back down, then euro comes back up, okay, and vice versa. So when euro goes up, dollar comes down. So you can see straight away how it influences the other currency, right? So you can see straight away how it influences the other currency. Now what you can also do is you can add more of these on here. Now I'd probably say just do one at a time. AXY, okay? And you can close these off just like you can with indicators, okay? You can close them off. So if we do AXY, now at the moment, Aussie dollar is quite strong, okay? Aussie dollar is kind of following, especially over the last month, it's been following DXY. So it's being considered as somewhere safe to be putting and saving your money as such. Now, when you look at the correlation prior to that, we can see that the dollar rose and we can see that Aussie dollar weakened. We can see that when Aussie dollar strengthened again, we can see that the dollar kind of slowly weakened. And again, we get that push on the dollar. What happens? We get that bearish push on Aussie dollar. So there's a big change of direction that occurs. And just at the moment, this is what we're seeing. So we're seeing that at the minute. So I'm just looking at the markets. Aussie dollar's going all right. So what we can see at the moment is there is no real correlation between the dollar and Aussie dollar, and it's just because both of them are very strong. So let's have a look at something else. So CAD is one that, to me, doesn't, sorry, CXY, that doesn't correlate very nicely, okay? And again, I'll just turn off one of the old ones. Now, what can you see most of the time, okay? You can see recently that CAD has been quite strong and also dollar has been quite strong. Previously, though, it tends to be relatively opposite at probably 70% of the time. So as the dollar rises, Canadian dollar weakens. As the dollar weakens, Canadian dollar rises, and vice versa. So this is the best way to have a look at the overall correlation between the pairs. It's a little bit messy. When you move the chart, it goes all over the place because it's showing you quite a lot. But what you can see, for example, more recently this year, is you're starting to see that this upward move here, okay, when the CXY was 10% down, it's actually recovered all of that. Now, in the same time, dollar has gone down half as much, okay? Dollar has gone down half as much. So this is probably the best way to keep an eye on what's happening and if things are correlating as they should do. The other one you would compare it to is BXY. Yeah, BXY. So BXY, let's turn off CXY. And even right here, you can see that it's kind of, again, polar opposites most of the time. So as the dollar rises, pound is weakening. As the pound strengthens, then dollar is weakening, but doesn't weaken as much. So use this. You can use this. The reason why I use the line chart is simply because otherwise it just becomes a little bit harder to see and to read, basically. But yeah, that's kind of what you want to do if you want to assess the correlation between the trades. But on average, NZD CAD is where I wrote my notes, I think. Yeah, on average, this is what tends to occur. And if we just look at what we just saw, is also CAD will tend to be bearish, and then GBP will tend to be bearish if the dollar is bullish. Okay, but then what happens then is when you start looking at the other currencies. Okay, I always recommend you guys do this. Is if you're looking at placing a trade, let's just take Aussie dollar CAD, okay, because this is one that's live at the moment. Okay, so let me just go back to candles. Let me delete all of this stuff. 2, 3. So Aussie dollar CAD. So what I suggest that you guys do, okay, what I suggest that you guys do is to cross-check, okay, cross-check your strength across other currency pairs. So as you can see, Aussie dollar CAD so far has rejected quite nicely from that level. We've got a nice bullish candle which breached the previous high of this candle here. So what I'm hoping for now is another bullish candle that can push us out of this range here. And I think we've got a previous daily high is this level here as well. So hopefully that will push us towards that. Now, the next thing that I would do, and what I did do before looking at that trade, is I jumped onto all of the Aussie markets, okay, and I had a look. And what I was looking for is just to see what the strength is mean, okay. So what we can see is Aussie dollar is USD is pushing up, okay, which means that Aussie dollar is potentially strong. If we look at Aussie dollar CHF, we can see that it's pushing up, which means it's potentially strong. If we look at Aussie dollar JPY, okay, it's pushing up. It's pretty consolidated today, but it's been pushing up, okay. And putting all of these things in our favor, Euro Aussie is down, okay, and therefore that's great because that means Aussie dollar is potentially strengthening. GBP Aussie, pretty flat overall, but overall it's bearish. So that gives me that insight that Aussie dollar is bullish and it's potentially a good direction to be focusing on to actually trade this market. Now, if we look at USD CAD, okay, the last couple of hours, is the hour, the 4 hourly. So on USD CAD, what I'm seeing is these higher highs and these higher lows here creeping in. So that kind of gives me that insight that maybe either USD is strengthening or CAD is weakening. So that's giving me one sign that maybe CAD is weakening. If I go on to EuroCAD is different because Euro is very weak right now. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at these markets and say to myself, right, is there a reason that makes me believe that Aussie dollar CAD long is the right decision? Because that's what I tend to do, is I tend to scroll through multiple different markets and just cross-check to make sure that CAD isn't really, strengthening very, very hard, for example. And I'll also analyze it from the aspect of, okay, NZD CAD is here. Okay, we're at an order block. We've got this kind of bullish order flow here on that lower time frame, and therefore if we reject this, then either NZD is going to be strengthening or CAD's going to be weakening, which is going to hopefully help our Aussie dollar CAD trade. Okay, so it's just about cross-checking. Gold trader, wait for it to come to. Yeah, we done that one. We did Zenat's question there as well. So that's that one. And the only other thing I think that was asked was regarding DXY. Okay, so DXY is confusing. It is confusing. It is confusing. It's only really, I think the best advice I can give you regarding DXY is just to don't focus on order blocks so much, just focus on order flow. So literally kind of go back to the old school and just look at, is it making higher highs or is it making higher lows? Is it at the top of a range or is it at the bottom of a range? Has it broken a support or a resistance? That is the best way to do it. And as long as you have the overall direction correct, or the overall analysis correct, then it's quite simple that right now at this point here, we've got this support formed. So what can we expect to happen? We can expect a bounce. At this point up here, we've got resistance. So once we get here, we need to be careful. So I don't look at it as, in a huge amount of detail like I look at the other markets, but I just look at the overall direction, the highs and the lows, etc., etc. And then from there, I use that as a guide to help me, understand just like we did with the correlations previously, if I'm expecting dollar to continue to be strong until we get to that high, then what can I expect? I can expect things like Aussie dollar to be weak. I can expect things like, again, Aussie dollar at the moment, as mentioned, is not weak, but I can expect euro to be weak. Okay, I can definitely expect euro to be weak. And what have we seen? We've seen more downside pressure come through on euro. Okay. We can also expect, as per what I just showed you, we can also expect GBP to be weak. And what are we seeing? We're seeing downward pressure on most of the GBP pairs. So all of this correlation can just help you to, again, it's not the be all and end all, but what it will do is it will just help you to have an extra, add an extra string to your bow, basically. So guys, I'll leave that there. It's quite a long session today, but I hope you find it useful. And if there's anything else I can help you with,